Our story today is about a very controversial figure in Arizona history, mostly because of the tactics he used in subduing renegade Apaches. His name was King Woolsey, and it's an exercise in why we shouldn't necessarily judge the past by today's standards. Anyway, that we find him in Yuma in 1860. He's about 29 years old, and he gets a job as a mule skinner. He arrived in Yuma with two friends, and other than their horses, they didn't have $5 between them. Then he ended up going up to Fort Yuma, where he gets a job supplying goods for the military, which came into Fort Yuma from California in 1862 to deal with the Confederates. In 1862, there was also a gold strike at La Paz, Arizona. And also in 1862, Woolsey and one of his friends ended up purchasing Agua Caliente Ranch on the north side of the Gila River, pretty close across from Stanwyck Station. Anyway, Woolsey got his first taste of Indian depredations when he was on the south side of the Gila with two of his workers gathering wild grass and loading it on a wagon. They were attacked by a dozen Apaches. They only had one shotgun amongst them, a double-barrel shotgun, which Woolsey took, and his first shot fell short without doing any damage. But apparently the Apaches thought that he was probably using a single-shot weapon, and the leader urged his troops to attack, and Woolsey waited till the last second and brought the leader down, and the other Indians fled. Then he went and got some reinforcements and came back to finish the job and ended up hanging their leader from a tree. Well, you know, people would frown upon that today, but it had a purpose because the other Apaches wouldn't come anywhere near that area with that body still hanging there. And he had work to do. There were many, many Indian depredations going on. In fact, you know, La Paz is where whichever party, Waltz must have been with the Weaver People's Party that came up through Yuma to La Paz, because he dropped out at La Paz and wasn't with them as they come on across. But he was in Bradshaw Mountains during one of these, some of these attacks, and he signed a petition to the territorial governor for protection with a lot of other men signing the petition. And I think this is probably the time when the governor of Arizona ordered in 500 Spencer rifles to be distributed amongst the civilians to protect themselves from the Apaches, or the Apaches ended up with some of those weapons from raids that they had conducted and was using against the Army at Apache Leap battle. During these negotiations for protection, Woolsey put together a party and tried to make it a treaty with some of the Indians. Woolsey had a small mill, and he was making pinole, which was a flour based upon ground wild Indian corn and brown sugar added, and it was a staple for everybody. And the Indians particularly loved this pinole. So he laced a bag of flour with strychnine, knowing that the Indians would find it and steal it, and went ahead and had a parley with their leaders. Well, when the effects of the strychnine began to take effect, the leaders all jumped up and started to exit, and Woolsey and his party cut them all down. Up to that point, Woolsey had at least dispatched 120 renegades previous to this. Well, then when his ranch was hit, he organized a group of 60 well-armed men, all good shots, and started pursuing the Apaches that had taken all these animals from his ranch and other ranches, and followed them down the Verde River until they got to the confluence of the Salt River and the Verde River. Anyway, he was outnumbered. Even with the large party he was vastly outnumbered and was facing extermination himself. So he called for a parley. Anyway, during this parley, an Indian came in and distributed some knives amongst the leaders. And the word had come down that all of Woolsey's party, including the other Indians, the Pimas and the Maricopas, were to be killed. And Woolsey, on a predetermined signal, had his people open up on them and kill 42 Indians in that particular event. Because of the battles that he fought with the Pinell Treaty, or what they call the Pinell Massacre, and the Bloody Tanks incident, he was highly recognized by the First Arizona legislature. He was awarded a lieutenant colonelship in charge of Arizona militia to deal with Indians. Arizonans loved what he did with the Indians. I don't care how controversial it was. Anyway, Woolsey was elected to the, he was responsible for the formation of the Democrat Party in Arizona, and he was elected to the legislature 5 times. And he ran for U.S. Senate, but was defeated. And he was an Arizona pioneer, and even like so many of them who were still in their 20s when they were scouts for the military, and just unknown numbers of very famous people here in Arizona that were responsible for Arizona history. And just in case you're interested, if you would like to visit the Superstition Mountain Museum, Clay Wurst has donated King Woolsey's Sharps rifle, and it's on display at the museum.